At 75 years of age, Bill Murray occupies a space in Hollywood that is increasingly uninhabitable. Once the Teflon Don of comedy, a man whose eccentricities were excused as the whims of a genius, he has recently found himself at the center of a firestorm that threatens to dismantle a 50-year legacy. The headlines of 2025 are unforgiving. Major projects like Being Mortal have been permanently shuttered, and a growing list of former co-stars are breaking decades of silence to describe a man who was as volatile as he was talented. But the most jarring element of this modern reckoning isn't the silence of his critics, it's the noise Murray is making himself. At a recent high-profile screening, Murray bypassed the standard lawyer-vetted apologies. Instead, he offered a series of raw, cryptic, and confrontational comments that have left the industry reeling. To look at Bill Murray today is to look at a man who is finally being forced to answer for a lifetime of playing by his own rules, a journey that began in the cramped, noisy corridors of a house in Wilmette, Illinois. The Bill Murray story is rooted in the chaotic survivalism of the Irish Catholic experience in mid-century America. Born in 1950, he was the fifth of 9 children. His father, Edward, was a hard-working but struggling lumber salesman whose annual income fluctuated between $13,000 and $18,000. While that might have been a middle-class wage for some, when divided by 11 mouths and the steep tuition of Catholic schooling, it was a recipe for constant scarcity. The Murray household was governed by a singular, unwritten law. Comedy was the ultimate currency. If you weren't quick enough to land a joke at the dinner table, you were relegated to the kitchen to scrub dishes. This wasn't just a game, it was social Darwinism in a suburban kitchen. To provide for the family, Bill and his brothers spent their youth as caddies at the Indian Hill Club. They would walk miles under the blistering sun, hauling heavy bags for the wealthy elite for a mere $3.50 per round. Every cent was surrendered to their parents to keep the lights on. The stability of this world shattered in 1967. Edward Murray, aged only 46, succumbed to complications from diabetes. Bill, then only 17, was unmoored. His mother, Lucille, was forced into the workforce, taking a grueling job in a medical supply mailroom. The loss of his father turned Bill's natural rebellious streak into something sharper and more defensive. He found solace in the stories of American outlaws, men like Wild Bill Hickok and Kit Carson, men who lived outside the law and answered to no one. Murray's academic life was a series of near misses. At Loyola Academy, he was the frontman for a rock band called the Dutch Masters, where he learned to manipulate a crowd with noise and improvised banter. However, his attempt at a serious path, studying pre-med at Regis University in Denver, collapsed under the weight of his own apathy. The turning point occurred on his 20th birthday in 1970. In an act of self-destructive bravado that would foreshadow his entire career, Murray joked to a ticket agent at O'Hare Airport that he had bombs in his luggage. The authorities were not amused. They didn't find explosives, but they did find nearly 10 pounds of marijuana with a street value of $20,000. The subsequent front-page coverage in the Chicago Tribune ended his dreams of a conventional career. Facing probation and expulsion, Bill followed his brother Brian to the Second City Improv Theater. It was here that his unsafe brand of comedy was born. He famously once broke a heckler's arm during a set, only to drive the man to the hospital afterward, a perfect encapsulation of the Murray duality, violence followed by a strangely intimate gesture of care. When Murray arrived at Saturday Night Live in 1977, he was stepping into the void left by Chevy Chase. The transition was brutal. The audience hated him at first, sensing his jagged edges. In response, Murray delivered an on-air plea for love that was both pathetic and brilliant, breaking the fourth wall in a way television rarely saw. His characters during this era weren't just funny, they were unsettling. On January 15, 1977, he debuted his Abraham Lincoln, not a statesman, but a man awkwardly interviewing for a modern job while refusing to remove his stovepipe hat.
This was followed by his photographer sketch in 1978, where he treated his co-stars like rag dolls, barking nonsensical orders at a viewership of 20 million people. Behind the scenes, the legend of the Murricane grew. He was prone to fits of rage in elaborate, dangerous pranks. In 1979, he planted fireworks in John Belushi's dressing room, an explosion that nearly resulted in a structural fire. By 1980, his relationship with the show's leadership had soured so significantly that he made a surprise appearance during a Buck Henry-hosted episode to sarcastically declare the show's demise. He left SNL not as a graduate, but as a deserter, moving toward a film career that would be defined by massive hits and massive property damage. In the late 70s and early 80s, Murray reinvented the concept of the leading man. In Meatballs, 1978, he dealt with a literal camp rebellion. The child extras, frustrated by production delays, slashed the tires of the camera dollies. Murray used this friction to fuel his performance, improvising the iconic "It Just Doesn't Matter" speech that turned a $1.6 million indie into a $43 million juggernaut. Caddyshack remains the gold standard of Murray's improvisational genius. His character, Carl Spackler, was largely unscripted. Director Harold Ramis essentially pointed a camera at Murray and let him riff. The Cinderella story monologue was captured in one take, a piece of comedic lightning that cost the production nothing but gained the film its soul. However, the production also saw Murray's temper flare. When a golf swing went awry, he smashed a $10,000 custom water feature, leaving the crew in a state of stunned silence. This pattern, brilliant improvisation followed by expensive destruction, became his calling card. As Murray's star rose with Ghostbusters 1984, so did the reports of his problematic behavior. During a scene with Sigourney Weaver, Murray's improvisations took a physical turn that hadn't been discussed, leading to a several-hour production halt and a deeply shaken co-star. Despite the film's $295 million success, the memory of that boundary crossing remained a dark spot in the production's history. The 1990s saw this behavior escalate into what some described as psychological warfare. On the set of What About Bob 1991, Murray utilized method acting as a weapon against Richard Dreyfuss. He reportedly stalked Dreyfuss off-camera, following him to restaurants and hotels to maintain the annoying dynamic of their characters. The tension was so thick that the crew feared physical violence, and Dreyfuss refused to speak to Murray for decades afterward. Even his masterpieces were born of pain. During Groundhog Day 1993, Murray was going through a bitter divorce and was notoriously difficult to work with. Harold Ramis, his longtime friend and collaborator, reportedly had to shoot over 100 takes of certain scenes just to get Murray to cooperate. The two men didn't speak for 20 years after the film wrapped.
By 1998, Murray was considered washed up by many in the industry. It was Wes Anderson who saved him, casting him in Rushmore. Murray, sensing a shift in the cultural wind, took a mere $9,000 for the role. He shed his manic energy and replaced it with a hollowed-out, melancholic stillness. This sad Murray persona became his new brand, leading to the 2003 masterpiece Lost in Translation. The film's ending, a whispered secret between Murray and Scarlett Johansson, became one of cinema's greatest mysteries. For 22 years, Murray refused to reveal the words. In 2025, amid the height of his current controversy, he finally let it slip. "Don't forget me." It was a line that felt less like a movie script and more like a plea for his own legacy. The modern era has not been kind to Murray's old-school tactics. In 2022, the eccentricity finally crossed a line that the industry could no longer ignore. On the set of Being Mortal, Murray's physical prank on a female crew member resulted in a formal misconduct complaint and a $100,000 settlement. For the first time, the "Bill being Bill" excuse failed. The movie was canceled, and the barbecued actor found himself isolated.
In 2025, Murray has taken to the festival circuit, not to promote new blockbusters, but to engage in a strange form of public penance. He is admitted to being lazy and destructive, claiming that his recent roles as broken, fading men are a reflection of his own reality. He is 75 now, still swinging a golf club, still planning a singing tour for 2026, and still refusing to follow the map. Bill Murray remains the ultimate Hollywood outlaw. From a $20,000 marijuana bust at 19 to a 2025 confession that has divided the industry, he has lived a life of total, unapologetic chaos. He turned his mistakes into art and his whispers into memories. But as the lights dim on his career, the question remains, will the world remember the laughter or the destruction left in its wake?